Welcome to In the Money. I'm your host, Daniel Dent. Over the last 20 years, I've worked with families and businesses, helping them become financially savvy. And now I'm going to do the same for you. Each show, I share personal financial topics to help you make better informed financial decisions. One of the most stressful and largest financial transactions we make in our lives is buying and selling a home. If you're buying a home, you could overpay, purchase in an area that doesn't meet your needs, or end up with a house with a bunch of problems that cost you a lot more than you originally thought. If you're selling your home, you could misprice the house, causing it to sell for less than what it's worth, or not do some simple things that would make it sell a lot faster. When you're buying or selling a house, there are 1,000 different variables that come into play. The good news, there's a right and wrong way to do it. And we're going to share that with you today. Albert Lee with Century 21 Mazzell & Associates, who's an expert in buying and selling homes, is joining us. Whether you're thinking about buying or selling a home, or you've done it several times, you'll want to stay tuned for this conversation today.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
We're discussing one of the biggest financial transactions of your life today, buying and selling your home. Joining us is Albert Lee, affiliate broker with Century 21 Mazzell & Associates, and all-around real estate guru. Albert, welcome to the show. Thanks for coming out.
Thanks, Daniel. Thanks for having me here.
So tell us about yourself before we get started and what you do.
Yes, I'm an affiliate broker with the Century 21 Mazzell & Associates, which is located in Germantown, Tennessee. I've been in the industry over 80 years now. And currently I am serving as a member of the board of the directors of the Memphis Area Association of Realtors.
Fantastic. Let's jump into this. I want to talk about selling your home first. And when is the prime time to try and sell your home?
Usually around spring and summertime is a good time to market your property for sale due to the fact that a lot of people, and many people do move around that time of the year. And at the same time, many families do have children involved. So in the summertime, taking a break of a summer break to move to a next destination is a good time.
Okay. I think everybody knows that or feels pretty confident in that spring and summer time frame. When we decide to sell our house, what are some of the first steps that we really need to take?
I would recommend doing the pre-inspection before you put your house on the market, and perhaps I may do a pre-appraisal, to kind of determine the value for the property, and at the same time, always hiring the realtors to go over, those necessary items, and at the same time, some of the things that maybe you might not be able to think about.
Okay, and we don't always have a choice when we sell our home. A lot of time it has to do with a job change, or we just flat out find another good deal on a property on our dream house that we want. So if we're selling in the winter or an off-peak time, what should we do then? What's different?
I would recommend to be aggressive. Be aggressive as far as the marketing the property, presenting the property, and make the house look stand out from the other properties that are in the same area for sale as well. And really, price it accordingly so you can move the property.
Well, let's talk about pricing for a minute, because that's always a big deal when it comes to selling your home. A lot of times we have a sense that, I raised my kids in this house, or maybe I upgraded the bathroom or the kitchen, or added another deck or something like that onto the home. How do you help people go about pricing their house in the right way?
The right way to determine the value for the property is to find the most recent sales in your neighborhood. Those are called comps, comparables, and finding them and the price it accordingly that way. Now, your property might have some of the things that the other properties does not have, maybe extra bathroom or bedroom, whatnot. Those can be calculated into the valuation. So again, consulting your realtor will be able to work with you and determine the right price for you.
So let's go back for a second. I did all this work on my home, and I've raised my kids there. It's a great home. It's better than any other home on the block, in my opinion. So I want a premium of 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50,000. How do you work with your clients and help take that emotion out of that decision?
Well, housing purchase and sales is one of the most emotional transactions you'll ever do, because a home is where you live and where you raise your family in. Now, however, in the marketing for your property for sale, there are buyers out there that might not agree with you as far as some of those extra things you might have done. Now, there are valued items such as adding the bathrooms or redoing the upgrades for the property, updates perhaps. I mean, we'll add the value to that. However, but maybe not up to the valuation that you think it is worth. So again, you have to take the emotional part of the transaction out of that, and your realtor will be able to help you with that.
Mm-hmm. So what are your best tips for selling your home quickly?
I have a simple 3-point system, which is presentation, marketability, and pricing it right. So as long as the 3 points work well with each other, you should have no problem selling it.
Okay, that's a really good strategy, I think. We've talked about pricing for a few minutes. Talk about the marketability piece. What does that entail?
Well, marketability, I can put it down as simple as either you can try to sell that property on your own by yourself, or just hiring a professional such as like myself with a realtor who has many tools in my tool bag to share with you, and then expose your property instantly to a market has many ready, willing, and able buyers out there. So it's more of working with the professionals in any industry, to work with and have that exposure. That's what the marketability comes in at.
And generally, they'll have more resources than I will as just an individual, and more outreach.
Yes.
So let's talk about presentation for a moment. That was the third part of the strategy that you mentioned. So what all goes into the strategy, or into the presentation part?
There's an old saying, there's always first impression is the last impression. So when you walk into the property, the buyers will have a sense of either they like this place or they don't like this place, and all of that can be triggered by a little thing as a lighting, it's a scent, and so basically all your 5 senses has to work for the buyer. Now, you can't make everybody like one thing, but at the same time you have to neutralize the aspect of that, so it's more inviting for everyone.
So my zebra print wallpaper, that's not going to fly, right?
Probably not.
So more neutral colors and things like that. Let's talk, staying on presentation for a minute, staging the house. I know there's professional stagers out there. Is that something that everyone should think about, or something that we should do, or the realtor could help us with?
Sure. Perhaps in the cases I've seen before, and the professional stagers do come in handy and brings lots of value to the property if it's vacant or anything like that. But if most of the people do have their own furniture to work with, and as long as they don't have a zero prints like that, outrageous, they'll be okay. But simple tips as such thing as the taking down your personal photographs, your personal agendas against the wall, or if there are many decorations on the wall, try to declutter that a little bit, so you will open up the walls instead of making people focus on those objects there. So they will open up the rooms a little bit more. If you have a heavy draperies around the windows, try to open it a little bit for the showing time, so when they walk in, they will have natural light comes in, and it's more open for the room.
So really depersonalizing it, and almost like a hotel room where it looks nice, neat, and clean,
Sure.
but less personalized.
Yes.
Well, hold that thought. I want to talk more about this in just a moment. We have to take a short break. We'll be back more with Albert Lee when we return. Please stay with us.
They're coming. Places, everybody.
Light check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
Everything looks good on our end.
And lights.
Come alive with the forest. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a forest near you.
are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to In the Money. I'm your host, Daniel Dent. If you're just joining us, we're talking about buying and selling homes today, and in doing so, how to put more money in your pocket. We're back with Albert Lee, affiliate broker with Century 21 Mazzell & Associates. Albert, before the break, we talked about selling your home, so I want to switch gears and talk about buying your home now. And I always recommend people get pre-qualified with a mortgage and do those things, getting their credit in order prior to going out and actually looking for a home, because it speeds up the process and is just more efficient overall. And so I want to talk about beyond the pre-qualification for mortgages and doing those types of things. What should we do after that once we're ready to really start looking? What's the next steps that we should take?
You know, to begin your next home search, you really need to determine what your needs and wants are. Many people focus on the wants rather than needs. Your needs definitely have to meet. If you need extra bedroom or extra bathroom, you need extra square footage or less of a square footage, the acreage, all of that, combined together. So again, to determine that, and then plus, start your process right along, always consult with the realtor, and the realtor will be able to work with you.
You know, one of the things too, and I think that's great advice, that needs and wants list, and we go for the houses that we've purchased, we've actually sat down and wrote a list out of what we need versus what we want. And that really helps you define your search and narrow it down, because otherwise you're just looking at a massive amount of potential homes. So let's talk about some other things that are important that probably don't know about, like being in a flood zone, things like that. What's your take on is that a good thing, bad thing? How long you plan on being there? What are some of these other variables that we need to think about?
I often see in many cases that where buyers, because buyers, when they visit the properties and look for properties, there's some of the things that they can't really think about it at the time is the location of the property, how elevated it is or how low it is, because it all work with weather that we have in the Mid-South area. We do get much rain throughout the whole year actually. So you want to be in the receiving end of the water or not, this sort of thing. Now, along with that, when you are at the property looking at it, I usually point it out, how well the structure is made, or which direction is it facing. Like for instance, if its house is facing south side, subsequently in the backyard, your patio area will be facing north, which means that you will give it natural shade during the summertime. You know how it gets in this, this area in the summertime. So when you're out there 5 o'clock barbecuing away, you will get some nice shade there. So I usually point those things out.
Yeah, great points. We don't always think about that, right? So I think that brings out another point. It's probably good to visit the home that you're looking at seriously at different times during the day, different days of the week. You can get a sense of the neighborhood, and like you're saying, if light's coming in one way or another, all of those factors should really be considered. Beyond that, things like the distance you travel to and from work, what school system that you're in. If you plan on having kids, and we're getting more probably in the financial planning side of it, but you don't want to buy a home that's too small. Or on the flip side of that, if you have elderly parents that may come and live with you for some time, you'll need a bedroom downstairs versus having a two-story. So let's talk about homeowners associations. That's pretty common, or neighborhood associations. As you're working with your clients, how do you take that into account?
Homeowners associations, we call HOAs frequently, and HOA is a very big part of the next purchase, especially if they're looking for a property that is located in a certain area. So you might want to ask these items: how much the dues are, how often you have to pay the dues. Some places usually collect monthly basis or the yearly basis, and what does dues pay for? Many townhomes or condos do pay for either trash collection, utilities, even cables. So you might want to identify those items. And along with that, it has some certain definitions of the restrictions, what are allowed and what are not allowed. And lately, what I've been noticing a lot is either HOA allows for rental or not. So whether you purchase a property, your lifestyle changes, you have to move out or something like that, And if you want to keep it as rental, certain HOAs do allow it and certain HOAs doesn't.
Yeah, I think those are all very great points, especially around the restrictions, because there's things as simple as you're not allowed to park on the street, and if you have an extra car, nowhere to put it, that could pose you a problem. And then the assessments that can come from an HOA if you're in a condo or a building or something like that, where you may have a one-off assessment one year that's very, very expensive that you weren't planning for. We talked a little bit before about kitchen updates and bathroom updates and things like that, neighborhood, school systems. What are some of the other things that people just don't normally think about when they're buying a home? You had talked about cove versus street in our previous discussions and kind of the natural light and size of rooms. Can you talk more about those?
In this area, we have lots of trees. Depends on the way you are, really. If you're in a subdivision setting, it's a more newer, developed area, that you might not have this kind of issues. But if you're in more older establishment, you will have to deal with the mature trees. So we have, again, going back to the having lots of storms and the rain and this sort of thing. And if a tree gets heavier and one of the limbs fall on your, on your property, and you're gonna have to deal with that. So trees are one of the big items that we have in this area. And along with that, as far as, like you said, about the traffic, how long it takes you to get to the work on a daily basis, or any other activities that you like to do around town that you want to go to. So traffic, it's not too bad around here, but at the same time, you might have to consider.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I never noticed before, and it's one of the reasons why I talk about going to the home at different times of the day. We had looked at one home and we just happened to go there in the evening, and the way it was situated, someone would come around the corner, and at night headlights would come into the house, and you just wouldn't know that if you were visiting it during the day, or certainly we didn't think about it. So it's something to keep in mind. One quick question also about home inspectors. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us real quickly what part they play in the process and how realtors work with them?
They play a very vital part of the whole process, especially contractual agreement. About the inspection, you have to, I mean, it's an option actually, but we will highly recommend any buyer to do one, so that way you can find any kind of unforeseen defects and whatnot, because seller might not even know them, it exists as well. So I always use a licensed and bonded inspector and plus with lots of experience, I might add, to work with you.
Okay, great. We're going to take another short break, and we'll be right back. Please stay with us.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund reading.
No.
Let me try. Sarah's bright, but when she's reading, she has trouble sounding out words.
Playing world music.
What?
I give up.
Wait, I was trying to show you how Sarah feels every day. Frustrating, isn't it? Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
Don't worry, 74 people were picked before me in the NFL draft.
To fight childhood obesity, United Way and the NFL are helping kids play at least 60 minutes a day.
Okay, time for the team obstacle course. Yay!
What this place needs is more healthy kids. To get involved or donate, go to unitedway.org/play60.
Now I get it.
You are watching Germantown Municipal Television, your source for everything Germantown.
Welcome back to In the Money. We're discussing how to save money when buying and selling a home. Albert, before the break, we were talking about buying a home and selling a home. But one more question I wanted to hit on there is, we all have a budget to work around, and whether that budget's large or small, is it better to buy a newer home that costs a little bit more, or an older home that may cost a little bit less that we may have to do some work on?
It really depends on your needs and wants, and because there are many homes that are out there, even though it's new or newer and has less of a quality than some of the older homes that are out there has lots of quality in them. So it's really depends on the location you want to be in, and plus the needs that you have for yourself and your family.
So that needs and wants list really come back into play, and it's important to have that kind of dialed in before you start looking. Also wanted to touch on, what's the difference between using a realtor versus for sale by owner? There's certainly some costs that go into using a realtor, and I think that's one of the reasons people may shy away from it. But can you talk to that for a moment?
Sure. It's anybody can sell their own, belongings, including houses. But at the same time, the encouragement to use a realtor to work with you on a transaction is that, first of all, it will be professional manner, and it will be done in the way we can represent your interests and your interests only in a transaction, not not just looking at our interests or anything like that. Client always does come first. And the second reason is that we will give you objective opinions, and plus the processing of the matter-wise. So that way, as we said before, it is a highly emotional transaction, but at the same time, you might want to lean on to somebody else to make decisions like that.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the contract. When we get into these contract negotiations, how does a realtor help from that standpoint?
First of all, realtor will be definitely more familiar with the contracts if it's a state or local that is involved with in a transaction, and also we can advise you and guide you as far as how to execute those contracts, and plus what position do you be holding throughout the whole transaction period. So again, getting somebody with industry knowledge, would definitely save you a lot of headaches and a lot of money.
So it sounds like just the professionalism that comes with it, the experience that comes with it, all of the things that we've talked about really make it worthwhile. So just talk about it just from a buyer's side, from the buyer's standpoint. If I want to use a realtor, what are some specific things there that you could help me with, or any other realtor could help me with?
Well, first of all, to identify the needs and wants, really, because it sounds very basic, but many people tend to not to do that. And in order for you to do that, you have to really sit down and discuss those items, and so that way it will make it easier for the research process goes. Because the 3-bedroom versus the 4-bedroom, that will make a little bit of a difference in the price range, and depends on where location is as well. So you could vary that. And also, being with a realtor, usually we have many resources in our, again, going back to tool bags. So if you have a certain needs or certain wants for next purchase, I can guide you by using what I have in my tool bag, so to speak, and give you the more professional opinions.
And a great realtor also will have connections in the industry. So when it comes to things like the home inspections we discussed a few minutes ago, you'll be able to refer somebody there and work with them. And I'm assuming be able to tell us if issue 1, 2, and 3 are a big deal, or maybe it's just issue number 2 and 3 on the list are big deals that need to be taken care of. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Sure. On the home inspections, you want to determine, number one, if it's a general maintenance item, or number 2, if it's a significant hidden defect. So if it's a hidden defect, obviously, you have to address it. Address it appropriately with the sellers and sellers representative at that point. If it's a general maintenance item, like peeling paint in the exterior, trims or something like that, then you can decide that and then negotiate it with the seller as well. So part of that, again, working with licensed vendors, does add more of a value to that. And also working with a realtor, you'll be able to negotiate not just the front end for the price and the terms wise, but you'll be able to negotiate the repairs and other items that comes along with it.
And that's a big deal, right? Especially as you buy older homes, the repairs, being able to negotiate that in, because at times that could be a couple $1,000s, or it could be $20,000, $30,000. Can you give us some examples of things like that you've seen with your clients?
Sure. One of the property that I work with, this client of mine, he was a single guy, and he was looking to purchase his second home. Now, he doesn't have a big family, so he wanted to buy just a nice single-family house. Now, this property, it was great on every aspect of it. I mean, inside was nice and spacious and offered pretty much all the features that he wanted to have, but roof was pretty old. So I had to let him know that, and the inspector let him know that as well. And he was okay with it, but he wanted to get some sort of compensation from the seller, because roof was almost at the last leg of it. So I was able to work out the compensation for him, and he was happy with it.
Okay. You know, I'm a big do-it-yourselfer, and so I always thought one day, well, maybe I would try to sell the home myself or buy a home myself, because I feel like I'm a pretty decent negotiator on top of all that. But we had an acquaintance of ours that bought a home on their own, and there were some undisclosed issues, and they had gotten a home inspection also, but just didn't negotiate very well during that process. And come to find out about 6 months later, 9 months later, there were some pretty big expenses that were associated with it. And now they turned around and they were able to sue the seller, but even then they spent so much more time, money, and effort and heartache, and just having to live in that home during all of this when all the damage was going on. So I can definitely see where having a realtor or having a professional on your side to help out would have made that case a lot better. Albert, appreciate you coming out today. Thanks a lot. We appreciate your experience and your expertise.
Thank you, Daniel. It's been a pleasure.
Buying a home is a complicated process, but as Albert and I shared, there's simple things you can do to not only save yourself money, but ensure you'll be happy with the home after you move in. Selling a home is complicated as well, and oftentimes our emotions get in the way if we've raised our family in the home or made upgrades ourselves. One thing to remember, it is simply a financial transaction. Emotions take away from the negotiation process, so put them aside and focus on the facts. That's where Realtor can help by providing objective advice. Emotions cost you money. That's all the time we have today. Thanks to Albert Lee of Century 21, Mazzell & Associates, and thank you for watching. If you'd like to see more shows, follow us on YouTube or Facebook at Germantown Municipal Television. You can also visit our website at www.gmtvonline.org. And remember, each person's financial situation is unique. Before making any decision, speak to a financial professional to see if our discussions today are in your best interest. We'll see you next month. I'm Daniel Dent, and now you are in the money.